Have you ever wondered who truly stands behind China against the United States in 2025? Why are certain countries ready to risk everything to support Beijing, even when global pressure rises? What kind of old alliances, unbreakable bonds, and shocking historical moments brought them together? In this emotionally charged exploration, we will uncover 10 countries that fully support China against the US, backed by real-world events, military cooperation, secret trade pacts, and history that will leave you stunned. Did you know some of these countries even fought wars or survived sanctions for China? Like, subscribe, and comment. Your support keeps us going. Watch until the very end because number 1 will absolutely blow your mind. Number 10. Belarus. Belarus is often seen as Russia's puppet, but in 2025, it emerges as China's silent supporter too. Under President Alexander Lukashenko, Belarus has made its stance clear: China is the future, not the US. After the 2020 protests, when the West imposed sanctions, China increased investments and defended Belarus at the UN. Beijing built factories, funded rail projects, and trained Belarusian police. Emotionally, Lukashenko sees China as a shield, just like Russia. The historic link: Belarus was part of the old Soviet system, China's one-time ideological brother, and that nostalgia fuels modern partnerships. In 2023, Belarus joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, hosting one of the largest logistics hubs in Europe. In 2025, Belarus backs China's stance on Taiwan and offers cyber defense assistance. Shockingly, Chinese surveillance tech is now installed in Minsk, helping suppress opposition. For Lukashenko, this is salvation; for the US, it's betrayal. Now, Belarus is not just Russia's little brother, it's China's unexpected ally in Europe. Number 9. Myanmar. In 2025, Myanmar is China's closest ally in Southeast Asia. After the 2021 military coup, the West turned its back, imposed sanctions, and demanded regime change. But China stayed, supported, and supplied Myanmar's generals, who now rely on China for survival. From military hardware to economic aid, Beijing fuels Myanmar's regime. In return, China gets rare earth minerals, ports, and access to the Indian Ocean. Historically, China has always viewed Myanmar as a strategic gateway. Even during colonial days, Chinese merchants and communities influenced trade routes there. In 2023, despite global condemnation, China signed a massive port deal in Kyaukphu, shocking the West. That port now serves as a critical supply hub, both military and economic. Emotionally, Myanmar sees China as a friend who doesn't interfere while the West lectures. Beijing supports quietly. In 2025, Myanmar helps China gather regional intel, suppress US influence, and expand Chinese language and media across its cities. The shocking truth: Chinese troops now train Myanmar forces in jungle warfare, preparing for broader conflicts as China builds a wall of allies. Myanmar becomes a silent sword on its southern flank. Number 8. Serbia. Serbia, in the heart of Europe, supporting China sounds unbelievable, right? But in 2025, Serbia stands as a European anomaly, choosing China over the US emotionally, economically, and politically. Their history is layered with pain. In 1999, NATO bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, killing 3 Chinese journalists. That incident, still remembered bitterly in both countries, sowed the seeds of a long-standing bond. China never forgot, and Serbia never forgave. Since then, Serbia has welcomed Chinese investment with open arms. Beijing funded major infrastructure, including highways, factories, and even COVID-19 aid when the EU delayed help. In 2022, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić called China his brother in public speeches. Serbia refused to align with anti-China rhetoric in the EU. Instead, it joined China's Belt and Road Initiative and, in 2023, signed multiple defense cooperation deals. Emotionally, Serbians feel betrayed by the West over Kosovo, over sanctions, and over years of exclusion. That resentment fuels a silent shift toward Beijing. Now, in 2025, Serbia publicly opposes Western sanctions against China, calls out US hypocrisy, and prepares to expand military exchanges. In a world divided, Serbia is Europe's shocking outlier, a rebel that roars for the dragon. Number 7. Venezuela. When you think of China's allies, Venezuela might not come to mind, but it should. In 2025, Venezuela openly supports China, not just diplomatically but economically and ideologically. Why? Because the United States tried to crush Venezuela with sanctions, regime change attempts, and economic blockades. But when no one stood by them, China did. Since 2007, China has lent Venezuela over $60 billion, making it one of the largest recipients of Chinese loans. In return, Beijing gets long-term oil supply and deep political loyalty. During the US-backed opposition uprising in 2019, China backed President Nicolas Maduro. When the West cut ties, China increased trade, sent medical aid, and even helped rebuild infrastructure in 2023 to 2025. While the provided script mentions Venezuela joining BRICS+, it's important to note that Venezuela was not among the initial countries invited to join BRICS in August 2023. Emotionally, Venezuela sees China as the counterbalance to American imperialism. After years of suffering, it believes only China offers respect without control. Now, Chinese military advisors quietly operate in Caracas, and Venezuelan oil flows to Shanghai, not Washington. It's shocking because despite extreme poverty and civil unrest, Venezuela never shifted west. Instead, it embraced China harder. And in 2025, if conflict erupts, Venezuela will serve as China's loudest voice in Latin America, echoing defiance across the hemisphere. Number 6. Cambodia. In Southeast Asia, Cambodia's loyalty to China is absolute and deeply emotional. Prime Minister Hun Sen once declared, "China is Cambodia's most trustworthy friend." And in 2025, that statement holds more power than ever. Cambodia relies on China for survival. Over 40% of Cambodia's debt is owed to Beijing. From roads to bridges, hospitals to schools, China built it all. In return, Cambodia blocked every ASEAN statement that criticized China's actions in the South China Sea. Historically, the bond goes back to the Khmer Rouge era when China supported Cambodia during its darkest days. That connection, though controversial, forged an unbreakable tie. Now, in 2025, China is building a naval base in Ream, sparking alarm across the Pentagon. This gives Beijing direct access to the Gulf of Thailand, and it's all thanks to Cambodia. Emotionally, Cambodia's ruling elite see China as a protector against both internal opposition and Western pressure. They fear democracy but trust dictatorship. The result? In the rising global divide, Cambodia doesn't hesitate. It fully supports China economically, diplomatically, and militarily. And that should shock anyone who still believes small nations can't change big games. Number 5. Zimbabwe. In 2025, Zimbabwe becomes China's most loyal voice in Africa. But why? The reason lies in shared pain and survival. After Robert Mugabe's land reforms in the early 2000s, the West punished Zimbabwe with brutal sanctions. Inflation soared, hunger spread. But while the US isolated them, China embraced them. Beijing gave loans, built hospitals, trained soldiers, and mined diamonds. By 2023, Chinese firms controlled over 70% of Zimbabwe's mining exports. In return, Zimbabwe offered loyalty. In UN votes, Zimbabwe always supports China on Taiwan, on Xinjiang, on Hong Kong. What's shocking is that in 2025, Chinese police are seen patrolling Zimbabwean cities as part of joint security deals. Local outrage grows, but the government stands firm because China means survival. Emotionally, Zimbabwe sees China as a savior against Western arrogance, a partner that doesn't preach democracy but delivers results. And when the world moves toward a China-US showdown, Zimbabwe makes it clear it will stand with the one who stood with them. Number 4. North Korea. Do you ever wonder why North Korea still exists despite US fury? The answer is chilling. China keeps it alive. And in return, Pyongyang stands ready to support China in any confrontation with the United States. In 2025, North Korea is not just a rogue state, it's China's unpredictable dagger. Historically, the bond goes back to the Korean War in 1950, when over 2 million Chinese troops crossed the Yalu River to save North Korea from US-led forces. Over 180,000 Chinese soldiers died. That sacrifice cemented a lifelong debt. Even during tough times, China never abandoned North Korea. It gave food, fuel, and protection. In the US, in 2023, after new US sanctions, China increased trade with Pyongyang by 70%. It's not just politics, it's protection. Today, North Korean missiles are pointed at US bases in Asia. Chinese tech allegedly aids their development. In return, North Korea promises its troops an arsenal to Beijing's defense. It's sad and shocking because while the world sees Kim Jong-un as isolated, he is silently shielded by the dragon. In 2025, as China's global wargames heat up, North Korea becomes the terrifying wildcard the US cannot control. Number 3. Pakistan. There's a term used in both Islamabad and Beijing, Iron Brotherhood. Pakistan and China's alliance is not just strong, it's unbreakable. In 2025, when US-China tensions escalate, Pakistan is one of the few countries that openly promises full support to China, no matter the cost. Why? This friendship goes back to the early 1960s when China supported Pakistan during its wars with India. In 1963, they even signed a boundary agreement over Kashmir against India's will. But the emotional bond solidified in 1971 when the US sided with India during Bangladesh's liberation war. Pakistan felt betrayed and found comfort in China. Since then, their ties grew like wildfire. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is worth over $60 billion, turning Pakistan into a strategic bridge for China. Chinese submarines patrol Pakistani waters, Chinese missiles are integrated into Pakistani defense, and in 2025, when the world questions China's aggression, Pakistan answers with full loyalty. Why is it shocking? Because even in moments when terrorism, debt, and global pressure haunted Pakistan, it chose China, not the West, not the International Monetary Fund, just China. In UN votes, in military drills, in silence and in fire, Pakistan stands with its iron brother. Number 2. Iran. What happens when two of America's biggest enemies shake hands? The world trembles. Iran and China's friendship is not casual. It's carved out of decades of isolation, sanctions, and survival. In 2021, they signed a $400 billion 25-year cooperation deal, giving China access to Iranian oil and infrastructure. But it wasn't just about money, it was a political punch in Washington's face. Iran has always leaned east. When the West turned its back during the 1979 revolution, China was one of the first to recognize the Islamic Republic. They've exchanged military tech, energy, and more. In 2025, as U.S. tensions explode in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait, Iran openly sides with Beijing. Why? Because China has never judged Iran's nuclear ambitions and always opposed US-led sanctions in the UN. Emotionally, it's deeper. Both nations carry the scars of Western humiliation, China with the Opium Wars, Iran with the CIA-backed 1953 coup. They remember, and they resist. Now, Iranian drones are helping China's allies, and Chinese satellites are guiding Iranian missile systems. The US knows it but can't stop it. Together, Iran and China form a shadow axis that thrives in conflict and survives through partnership. Number 1. Russia. In 2025, Russia and China stand side by side, not just in spirit but in firepower, economy, and ideology. Their bond goes far beyond diplomacy. The Russia-China No Limits partnership announced in February 2022 wasn't just a statement, it was a global warning. Even during the Ukraine war, China silently supported Russia by continuing trade and defying US sanctions. In return, Moscow offered Beijing advanced military tech and critical energy support. But this isn't new. Back in the Cold War, both nations started off as allies. Despite falling apart in the 1960s, they reconciled in the 1990s. In 2001, they signed the Treaty of Good Neighborliness. Since then, their bond only grew. In 2022-2024, joint military drills in the Pacific shocked U.S. intelligence. Russian energy pipelines now run deep into China's heartland, and after the West abandoned Russia, China embraced it strategically, financially, and emotionally. Now, in 2025, Russia will support China even in war because both know they share the same enemy, U.S. dominance. So now you know 10 countries that shockingly support China against the U.S. in 2025. These bonds weren't built overnight, they were forged through war, pain, betrayal, and loyalty. Like, subscribe, and comment below which one shocked you most. Thanks for watching.